Hello and welcome back to T-Rated.
Hi.
Where we're going to have conversations on growth, life, and TS. I am Andy Jaide, of course. I have a very special guest here with me today.
Hi, I'm Nicole Korsakova.
Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
I am basically a content creator and recently multiple award nominated porn performer. I obviously do the trans porn, but yeah, I have been more out of the industry than in lately. But yeah, long-time sex worker.
Long-time sex worker.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
I was born like near here in Atlanta, and I grew up in North Carolina.
Okay. Where do you live now?
I live in Austin, Texas, which I honestly, like, I moved there just for, like, a relationship, but I like it now. It's a good vibe for, like, I think where I'm in my life.
What does Austin have that Atlanta doesn't have?
Barbecue, I don't know.
We have barbecue.
It honestly, it has a big client base that seems to, like, vibe with me. I don't know why, like, it's a different, like, energy in Atlanta, but I just haven't lived here as an adult, you know? I moved, like, away probably when I was 5.
I think Atlanta has gotten, in that context, I feel like Atlanta has gotten inundated with a lot of us.
A lot of the dolls. Yeah. Or not the dolls.
There's too many transsexuals in Atlanta.
We're gonna have to start forced detransitioning some of them.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, some of them have barely gotten started, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So, what made you get into doing adult content originally? Or actually, let's backtrack.
Yeah.
Tell me about your transition story.
My transition story. Well, I think I mentioned I grew up in North Carolina, and I think I guess when I was like maybe 14, 15, I ended up like, you know, begging my parents to homeschool me. I didn't tell them at the time, but I was like, you know, hoping that I could kind of like transition in secret, so by the time I like reached college, I'd be able to like basically be stealth. Because like I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'd met any girls or heard of any girls doing that, but, like, in my head, that was, like, the only way to do it. And then, like, maybe a couple years later, I actually, like, came out to my mom, like, told her everything I, like, wanted to do, like...
How old were you at that time?
I was 15 or 16. I think I was 16. And I think the whole reason that it took me even that long is, like, I didn't even really know about hormones till I was, like... I found out about them online. I was like, okay, so there's medical ways for me to transition this early on that aren't as like expensive or as invasive as like surgery. Because I think like I obviously started questioning when I was like 12 or 13, or like at least like, you know, finding trans women and being like, okay, like I think this is what I am. I also, you know, I was recognizing like a lot of trans women, at least like if you're just like Googling online, like are heavily surgeried. And I was like, well, I don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to like do that if that's the only way to like live as a woman.
Because you're a little younger too, so when you were 16, yeah, like YouTube was starting to become.
Yeah, it's like who was up there, like Gigi, Gorgeous, fucking yeah. There weren't like a lot of trans like influencers at the time. It was mostly just porn stars. So I think like when I was like finding trans women, it was like fucking like Bailey J and Serena Valentina. Yeah. It's like. I don't know.
Very doll aesthetic.
Very doll aesthetic. I listened to Bailey J's podcast for like the longest time. I think her personality is very like authentic and like sweet. Like I've always looked up to her like more as a personality than like I guess like a porn performer. I honestly am not like very porn brained, so it's like there aren't a lot of performers that I like look up to or want to like be able to like act like.
Emulate, yeah. Well, keep going, tell us more.
Yeah.
So you're 16?
So I was 16. I actually found out about hormones, told my mom, all that. She was super supportive. Basically, I didn't know how I'd be able to, like, find them, because it's, like, she's, like, a little hippy-dippy and, like, like, medicine. So I was like, how am I supposed to, like, get on hormones without, like, jumping through all these hoops? I was hearing about girls being, like, medically hazed and all that. Like, you know, just if they go to therapists, like, it sounded like it was taking years for people to like actually take it seriously. So I don't know, I started like stealing birth control. Like, no, seriously, like
no. Nothing too bad on birth control because there's several birth control queens still running around in the streets.
Right?
In
That's
different
how a lot of people
countries.
start.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, then I went that route, and at that point, I think I was maybe like a half year in, like just taking fucking like herbal supplements and like birth control, and like I already had titties and stuff, and I
You were
went to
drinking
like,
a lot of soy milk?
oh, I was heavy on soy milk. I drank a lot of green tea. I got very in shape that first year, and like I kind of, I was just very like trying to like snatch my waist. I think like looking back, I was like insanely unhealthily anorexic at the time. Like if I don't have many pictures of me when I was like that young, but I'm like I was skeletally thin, and it was not cute on me. But I think around that time though, I went to like some like queer group, you know, those like trans youth like outreach groups. I went to one of those. Like I was the only like
They have
trans
those in North
woman.
Carolina?
They have them in Asheville, like North Carolina. It's like it's very like it's a woke city, but like I will say like there's maybe like one or two other trans women who were there, and they were all much older than me. And I think they were like administrators, but they were also like kind of creepy. So it was like it like definitely did give me like I just didn't have like
It did give you
community
the-
or friends
yeah.
like my age who are transitioning who are like also women. Like when I was that young, so it's like I just hung out with like I don't know trans masks and like other like weirdo bisexual women when I was like that young, and I don't think I actually met like another like doll around my age who was kind of like doing what I was trying to do until girl maybe like 17 or 18, like a couple years into my transition. And I think I just like I got like super like head over heels like a crush on them because I was like, oh my god, another doll.
They were the,
Yeah, and
the
then like in
first-
retrospect I'm like it's a heavily tattooed trans man. They have those on every corner here. It's like I don't know.
They're a lot more prominent now.
Oh, very.
Was your were your like parent like was your dad supportive of it too, or?
Yeah, I mean he's supportive. I think he just also like doesn't get it. Like my mom just sees me as her daughter. Then my dad is very just like, oh, I don't believe in gender, and like, oh, I'm kind of. It's like he's like
Your
a
dad
little
doesn't
too
believe in
woke about it.
Okay.
And like his history with his gender has been like a little like fluid. I wouldn't say he's ever transitioned, but I think he projects a lot of that onto me, and like that's been very difficult for me to be like, no, I'm like actually a woman. I'm not just like, you know, post gender like hippy dippy.
Yeah.
Like gender doesn't exist. Like
We have like the most strikingly opposite parent
Experiences?
stories. Yes.
why is your dad a tranny?
No, both of my no. My parents are very Southern Baptist white Christian people.
Yeah, no, I'm from the South too. It's just like my dad was from like Georgia and my mom's from
They
Ohio.
they like yeah, they would never gender is very much concrete and biblical.
It made a big difference, I think, in me being able to have access to it young. So I'm happy and grateful that I was able to do it.
No, I love that for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It was probably like, I was like 21 when I had my first procedure. So I was like hormones like that whole time. Then like 21, I got like my boobs done. I had them paid for by like a sugar daddy who like,
We love that for a girl.
yeah, he's known, girl. Like he's bought surgery for like maybe like 5 or 6 girls that I could like mention to you,
Is he
and like
based
if
out
you're
of-
in the tank,
is he
you'd know.
based out of Florida?
He's based out of like a couple places.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna like obviously
Yeah,
you know mention
I'm
his
not gonna
name,
say
but like
his name.
there's other girls in like the tank who like
Thank you,
would know
unnamed
exactly
sponsor.
unnamed transsexual sponsor. No, he's like he buys like FFS tits. Like I think he's just like he's into making the dolls. I still see him a lot. But yeah, he paid for that first procedure, and then everything else is kind of like cascaded from there because it's like I didn't really start porn until after I got my tits done because I felt more confident with my body.
Is that what made you get into porn? Your tits? What
No.
drove you into porn?
I got into porn because I was like dating a girl who like had a big like OnlyFans page. So I was like, okay, I can do this too. I was already like escorting at that point. Like I started escorting before I moved to Texas, so that was like maybe when I was like 19, 20. It's like I've always had like a weird relationship with it because I was like trying for so long to avoid getting into sex work because it's like I wanted to like break that cycle. I didn't want to be like
It's
another
like the
girl.
stereotype. Of
Yeah, it's like I wanted to actually make the most of my like opportunities, it just like it's hard. Like you really are just gonna go through a lot if you're like a trans woman in a very like rural area. It's like it's just hard to find work because like people can like say they don't care, but then like they're always worried about like who else will like what they'll think about like a trans woman like working at their business or so it's like it just like runs so deep. It's like hard to find housing, hard to find a fucking like job out there that's like not garbage. I don't know. I dropped out of college like the first year of my transition because like I graduated like pretty early. So I went to school like before I was like ready, before I was like even used to like independence, and I just like I fucked up my first opportunity. And it was like a nice art school like here in like like Savannah College of Art and Design.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I went to the campus in Savannah, and it's just like I spent all of my time partying, and I was like I can't keep up with this.
That's funny. I used to want to go there so bad when I was young.
Really? What were you gonna go for?
Fashion design.
I love that. I went for fashion marketing. Yeah.
I used to because I wanted to go there, but at the time when I was trying to go, it was parent. You had to do like parent plus loans.
Okay.
And I'd gotten like $20,000 in scholarships, but I needed like an additional like 10 grand for the year to be able to go. But my parents weren't going to find like any kind of loan stuff for me to go, so I'm not going.
Yeah, no, I remember how much tuition is there. It's like it's insane. There's a reason that most of the people who graduate from that school are like untalented rich kids.
Yeah.
And like no offense to Savannah College of Art and Design.
Because it's like a private. I mean, it's like a private art school.
Yeah,
so like,
it's a nice, prestigious art school, but it's like where rich families send their fuck up kids to like get a job in the arts, and it's like. I don't know. If you're an artist, you can succeed on your own merits. I'm going to say that. I mean, I've met so many self-taught artists who are just like, I look up to them a lot more, I think, after seeing that contrast. It's like, I don't know. It's like, shout out Brandon Graham, my my mentor in like visual art. Like, there's a comic book artist who like is a friend with like a lot of the porn performers in Vegas. And like, I think when I was living out there, he was like a great resource to have because he's just very grounded and like he understands that like a lot of my interests are just like more creative and like I'm wanting to transition out of like porn eventually. So like he was just so like supportive and like kind of recognizing that that was something I had to like sideline for like my transition and like
the art, like, sidelining the artistry.
Yeah, like art stuff because it's like that's what I originally had seen for myself as like a career, and I had to like put that all away for like transitioning and pursuing like other things like because I want to finish my body before I join the real world, and like I'm already there. I think I'm just so stuck in like weird like unhealthy transsexual mindsets where it's like any imperfection is something that like stands between me and being accepted in my mind, when it's like I could just move somewhere that's less weird about trans people and it would just be fine.
I get that because I get that especially in because I talked about like on a previous episode that like doing this is the most uncomfortable thing for me personally that I've done. Even though I've done like adult content, like done my own like independent porn, like doing stuff like this is a lot more uncomfortable, just like in general, because it feels more like vulnerable. Me and more vulnerable and more authentic to who I am than like my porn and like adult content does.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's like it's easier to just show your body than to actually like show yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand that. How did yours start?
What, my transition?
Yeah.
I've talked about it some on here. I started late. I started transitioning.
But you told me you were already like getting stuff done even
I was
before
like
you were,
androgynous.
That's something. Yeah. You were living your truth even before.
Yes. Very best androgynous life since like 21, 22. Because I started having like laser hair removal then.
Okay. That's kind of...
But my, I was actually talking to my makeup artist about it earlier when he was here. Because a lot of that just came from like the ingrained stuff from my parents. And even between most of my 20s, like up until I started like my medical transition, was I could do, it was very much cross-dresser tees. But from like 23 up until I like started medically transitioned, I didn't wear like boxers and stuff. Like I wore like thongs and like women's panties. I didn't wear like bras.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like a transvestite though, because it's not like it excites you.
No, there's no excitement to it. It was just, but I would do like that, started getting laser hair removal. did makeup. Like at one point my hair was down to like my nipples. But I was doing all of that stuff and I could do that just so long as, but I couldn't like actually transition. Cause that was just like too much. That was taking it too far. Even though
it's like painful to like kind of bridge that gap, I feel like.
But like even though the idea of me being a girl or me being like a woman later on in life, it's not something that was like new.
Yeah.
Cause like when I was little, I would always wear like shirts to swim in because like all the other girls had their breasts covered up at that age, and so I was like, well, I need to have mine covered too.
I feel like I had something like that. I would always wear those like weird like UV swim shirts because I just like I didn't like how my body looked at all. So I definitely relate to that. I don't know. I think there's like something like just really difficult about like those first couple of years where it's like you start getting actually rejected for your womanhood, where it's like before it's like, you know, people are fine with like a feminine man. Like they're disrespectful, but it's like they at least get to call that a man. And it's like I think it's really painful when you're still like going through the phases of like knowing who you are, but like having other people like actively reject it. And like it never fully goes away. It's like as long as there's someone who like has a fucking opinion and they can clock, they're going to like make a big deal about it. You just, I don't know. I think it just comes with time getting to like adjust.
Yeah. I feel like as you get older, and then it's like as you get older in general, but then also like as you get further into a transition, stuff like that doesn't bother you as much. Because like I feel like there's a difference between getting on the internet and talking about how people treat trans people versus my general day-to-day life. Because my general day-to-day life is like I wake up, go to the gym, do whatever I'm doing, and like my transness isn't an essential part of that day.
I think I don't
and
know.
And that could possibly be like because I live in Atlanta, but like people.
Yeah, you're in Atlanta. Also, like you're very passable. I think for me at least, it's like I stand out for like one reason or another, and like I still get dirty looks, but it's not like I get like surd. I think the last time I got surd was like a gig. I worked at Swarovski. Like and he was like really trying to like lay it on thick.
Literally the last time I got misgendered was by a gay guy I used to work with.
Yeah, it's like
or I didn't get misgendered. I got misgendered in the fact that like he dead named me. Like when I was at dinner with a bunch of other of my girlfriends.
Because like they think they can kiki with the girls. It's like just not. It's not cute. Like if you go on those pages for like Doll Planet and stuff on Instagram, it's like you go through the comments and there's so many just like twinks that like want to like dunk on the girls so hard, and it's like
that's in
you
general,
just don't belong here.
If like gay men will online, and I can't say this with all gay men because I had a gay guy who was on my podcast recently that I'm friends with, and like he's not like that. So obviously it's not all gay men.
No, of course not.
But there is like a lot of them who just they don't like us for whatever one reason or another. The guy who was actually on the podcast, Chauncey, was talking about how he felt like part of it's like a jealousy issue.
I think it's definitely that.
They want to come for the men.
Yeah, and then like they'll make a point. It's like, yeah, they'll see us too. Like your men are still hitting us up on Grindr. It's like, okay, that's not my problem.
But yeah, that's not like a flex. The fact that you can like
community dick.
You can get community dick. Okay, congratulations.
I don't know. I think it's like a little bit of like they want. Like, even though that they are men and want to be recognized as such, they still want like their beauty to be recognized in that same way. And I think they don't understand that for us, it's different than just beauty and different from just like having a man validate us on like some sexual or like aesthetic level. It's like we are spending our lives as women because we are women, not just because, you know, we want to be pretty for like men. It's I think just like that's where like the disconnect is, and men can only
because men in general have that disconnect of thinking that we do all of this for like male attraction and attention.
Yeah, no, they only see it like through like the male gaze, and I think that's why they are only able to like recognize like transness by like its relation to manhood, even if that means like, you know, it being put on just to like gain male attention.
Because I think, like in relation to that, I feel like that's where the trans community, to a certain extent, shot itself in the foot in the idea of using the verbiage of, well, I feel like a woman, so I transitioned, as opposed to saying, well, I knew I was a woman, and that's why I transitioned. Because then people would start, well, oh, well, you know something. You knowing something to be true is a lot different than like, oh, I just have this feeling. Because you could feel sad one day and happy another.
Yeah.
And so they take it to mean, oh, we just feel like
You're
that now and in the
unsure,
moment. And it's not
yeah.
as authentic as like,
And I feel like a lot of
having a
girls
core
do
sense of knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicole. How's your drink?
Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
Loving it.
Depending on what platform this is, very non-alcoholic.
Yes. We're just drinking juice. So I want to circle back because you were talking about finishing up your transition.
Yes.
What does finished look like to you?
I mean, not like especially different from where I am now. I just like I am like hoping to get like bottom surgery. Eventually, I'm trying to make it happen in the next like couple of years. Just because it's like I do have like a lot of my life ahead of me. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't enjoy using my dick enough for it to like be like the main way I'm able to like have sex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bottom a lot of the time, but it's like, it's honestly just like really disappointing that like the prime like sexual years of my life, I have to spend like not even like with a pussy.
Doing it.
I guess as
Okay.
someone who wants to have a pussy.
Bottom surgery.
You know.
Do you feel like there's like a disconnect? Like in terms of having to do porn? Because obviously in trans porn, that's
Very
like a key
toxic.
focus.
Yeah.
So you feel like there's like a disconnect you have to go through in order to like create that kind of content?
I mean, yeah, it's like obviously it's like I feel very out of my body when I'm on camera. I'm kind of just like, you know, going with it. Like it's never for me. It's like if someone is hoping that the porn star like on the other side of the camera is like, you know, just right there because they want someone to watch them like jerking off on camera, then that's like maybe an unrealistic expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like I show up. I'm good at my job. Like I don't feel bad about any other content I make, but I do feel like it does create like a very unrealistic image of me personally, and maybe like a very unrealistic idea of what sex is like for trans women, because it is very like trans top focused, and when girls are bottoms, they're almost like they act like sissies. It's like it feels very like I date like trans women as well, so it's like it's very different from what my sex life is like outside of porn. But that's like that's not surprising. That's all porn.
Yeah.
I think it just also is like a lot of men are coming into like dating trans women like only watching trans porn, and
they're getting
it sets like some weird
like a skewed
expectations.
misconception.
And I think that's what I like about like OnlyFans content. It's like it's a lot of girls who are like they're creating the porn that's like a better representation of how they want to like enjoy their bodies, how they want to have sex. And like I always really appreciate that because it's like I'll see girls who are just like, okay, this is like I appreciate this because it's like it's very clear that you were just trying to be like treated like a cis woman when you're on camera. And I feel like not all trans like porn studios, like the large ones, like really do that. Like they try to, but then it's like it's still cock focused. It's still like.
And I feel like that's probably like a hard line to like tiptoe through.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of girls who are, like T.S. Madison, for example. Like she is very.
She's post-op, right?
Huh? T.S. Madison?
I thought she was.
No, she's like very vocal on the fact that she is non-op. Like she is very affirmed in the fact that she is a woman with a dick. And a woman with a dick who like enjoys using her dick. And so, but I think we get painted with like a broad stroke of that's how all trans women are, when in reality it's not.
Yeah, and like I don't want to like make my experiences seem like they're universal. They're just like for me, and it's like people who have gone through similar things. It's frustrating because it's like I meet a lot of guys that are very like porn brain. They like are very like expecting one thing, and it's like they're never disappointed by me, but they're always like I guess disappointed that I'm not serving like the full TS top fantasy when it's just like that's from porn, girl.
That's
like,
what they want.
Yeah, that is what they want, and it's like.
Are you speaking more in relation to your relationship aspect or like sex work aspect?
Sex work, like 100%, or just like casual dating. It's like if I'm dating someone more than once, it's like they have figured out what my boundaries are. And it's like a lot of guys that I like see regularly, they either know not to touch it or they just don't care to.
Okay.
And like I really appreciate that because it's like I get enough pleasure from like anal, like genuinely, like it feels great. Like I just also don't think enough guys like don't like realize that sensation down there when you're on hormones, especially for like as long as I've been on hormones, it really changes and it's very different from how a guy experiences sensation. So they're either gonna be like doing something really like uncomfortable for me, just like physically, because it's like
They tend to be very rough
yeah, and they think like a
in
lot of
that area.
sensations in the shaft, and like I just don't have that.
They tend to. That's what I've noticed. Is like they tend to be very rough with stuff, and estrogen in general. Um, when they say you feel more or you like have more emotions and stuff like that when you're on estrogen, it's not just that. It's also just like touch sensation, and a lot of times they go into it with like the mindset of the same way they touch themselves,
Yeah.
and it doesn't correlate because they can be a little bit rougher because they may have sensitivity down there, but it's not to the same level.
They think that more intense sensations are more intense experiences, when in reality it's more like there's an emotional aspect to it. There's like a subtlety to it. Like it needs to be very like it needs to be more of a caress than just like literally like
they're trying to rub you raw.
Yeah, no, it's not a thing. I have like enjoyed people when they like touch it sometimes, but it's just like it is not what I prefer for myself. And like I just don't think guys usually very good at.
Yeah. And there's like a mental, like you were saying, there's a mental aspect to it too. Like when it's not something you just like correlate to for yourself, like for
Also,
yourself.
they try to suck dick like they want their dick sucked, and like it's just not how it's just not how it works.
How are they supposed to do it? I'm just kidding. We'll save that for a different platform than this one. So, in relation to you and your decision to get into doing like porn and sex work and OnlyFans, is it something that you would recommend to other girls? And if yes, then why? If no, why?
I mean, I got into it like just because I already was seeing clients and like obviously my ex, but it's like I don't think I would have gotten so deep into doing content if like it wasn't for the pandemic. It's like I didn't realize I only started working like maybe a couple half a year possibly before like COVID started. So it's like I got like a couple months of like pre-COVID like client traffic like for escorting, and then during COVID it just like it petered out entirely. I started doing a lot more content just because like it was supplementing the income and it was like a consistent check. And like obviously it's like I was dating like a girl who was like she was making like 20K a month like at the time that we were dating, so it's like I was trying to reach that level. Like when I was with her I kind of said it was very doable, but also her business model is very different from mine. Like she films content like almost daily, and I tried to keep up with that at the time. It just was like it fatigued me in such an extreme way. It's just like I don't have that type of energy to give to that many different men, and I don't know. I couldn't keep up with it. Like my page grew astronomically in that time that I was like doing that, but then like after that I was like I can't keep up with that. I feel like I'll catch something because it's like I was filming with guys off Grindr too. It's like I was finding a lot of guys that like
Grindr can come in clutch sometimes.
Yeah, no, like there's some cute guys, like there's some cool guys, but like I definitely was put in some situations where it's just like I would rather just film with someone who's professional and not just trying to like, see me for free.
Yeah.
You know? I will say like filming with more like professional people in porn, and sorry I'm going a roundabout way to get to the like recommending
You're fine.
Working in porn. I feel like I have noticed a lot of guys try to like add legitimacy to themselves by even starting like an OnlyFans, but then like they're not posting content. They're just trying to like do content trade with like girls who are like starting out their page. They're just trying to fuck like models.
They want to because a lot of because I can see that because I've definitely got a lot of men who maybe they've done one or two things on their own, And then they'll send emails or messages wanting, oh, I think if we do content together, it'll really blow up. And I'm like, well,
Or worse yet, they
yeah, because
actually
all of
have
my
a
content,
following,
yeah.
and like they just try to use it to like hook up, and it's like that's not. I don't think that's good either.
Or
It's
they
like,
try to use it just to like somehow catapult it into them getting some of your notoriety.
yeah, your notoriety or some of your girlfriends like kind of falling under their wing. I think it's like I don't like it because it's very like I don't think being a sex worker should be treated like a dating pool that you then all of a sudden have access to. I feel like it's something a lot of people try to do where it's just like they want to fuck porn stars so they'll get into porn, and I think there's a lot of people who are in the industry because they don't have many other options, and it's very like it felt unfair to me that I was put into this situation where I all of a sudden felt like I I don't know. I had to be reciprocal with people who are involving themselves for much less, you know, what would the best word be? Like much less balanced reasons than how I
Uh-huh.
feel about myself. It's like I don't think that like getting into it as a hobby or getting into it just because you want to fuck porn stars is a good enough reason. Like
No.
if I'm being completely honest.
Like if it's gonna be a business, treat it like a business.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so fucking unprofessional. Like even showing up to set, like expecting to like have like a hookup. It's like you're gonna be filming something. You're gonna be filming probably sex, but you should not assume you have any
It looks a lot
consent
different.
granted just
Yeah.
off of that. Yeah,
It looks a lot different in reality than it does like the behind the scenes aspect of it.
yeah. And then like you'll go on a professional porn set, and people just like they'll call cut. We're gonna reposition, and it's like the guy's face will just go cold, and it's like that's what I like. I like seeing that it is just an act because it's like I feel very like you do feel a little captive when it's like a guy who like you are trying to like be reciprocal enough that like everything goes smoothly.
Uh-huh.
It's like maybe it's just like I'm young and like not good at holding my boundaries, but like at least when I first started, it was like very hard, like feeling like I had to like give myself more emotionally to like clients or to like people I was filming with
Mhm.
because like I was afraid that like the rejection would have them lash out in some way.
Uh-huh.
And like I kind of realize now it's like no, it's like they're I don't know, like I don't want to sound like a misandrist, but it's like a lot of guys if they're coming to you for reasons like that, like they don't have great confidence either.
Mhm.
And like you do need to like enforce your boundaries or else like they will just like walk all over them. And a lot of guys like try to pretend that they don't see them. So it's like I'm glad that I'm making more progress with like I guess holding my own. But like
Mhm.
I think when I first started in porn, I didn't really get where like the line was typically drawn. And at least now I kind of can see if it's like there's an unprofessional level of like intimacy that is being like enforced where it's just like okay this like you need to realize that we're both like leaving here at the end of the day and this is like just a check because like it is not I don't think it's okay to like show up to a set hoping that you're gonna find like a girlfriend or a hookup.
It's like listening to that is very interesting from my point of view because I've never done like professionally like with a studio or management
You do
company
great.
shot that kind of content. But and so my expectation it's interesting listening to you say that because for my expectation, I would think there would be a certain level of professionalism
Yeah.
from the men in those kind of scenarios
In the
as opposed to
studios
the
it's
ones that I'm
50
used to. Because like the ones that I'm used to have come from men very much being like that, where a lot of them
Well, women will be like that
have like the
too.
hope that it's going to turn into something like after the fact or feeling as if it's not
But that's not
just
the
creating
norm either.
content.
It's just like a lot of people in like the porn industry proper are trying to date, and I think I had a producer like tell me, like right after, like he was like driving me like back down from fucking like Ventura or somewhere, like the same week as like the TA awards last year, and he was kind of telling me, he was like, yeah, you shouldn't be dating other people in the industry. It's a bad idea. It's always a bad idea. And I was like, fucking true though.
Uh-huh.
And like I took that like advice to heart, like maybe a little too hard. I think I like broke up with like the person I was dating like that week. But it was also just like it was very like no, it was like I was dating another girl in the industry and it was like the week of the awards. I was like, this isn't really what I see for myself. Like in a lot of ways. But no, I was trying to say like it's not just the studios. I noticed that just more with like the more professional someone gets, it doesn't necessarily mean they're like gonna or the more legitimate someone gets like through a larger following, it doesn't mean they're going to be more professional about boundaries. In fact, I feel like it's a lot of the like more higher up girls that I see that are just like they don't know where to draw the line, and I think it's just because it gets harder and harder the more famous you get to like I guess have like an inner circle to have like relationships with people who aren't like also in the same field. So it's like if you're being paired with another like pretty girl and you're like trauma bonding, you just want like so badly for a connection. And guys will do that too. I got asked out a lot by like other people I was seeing on set, and it just like it wasn't really what I was looking for at all.
Um, I want you to go over what you were just saying, but I do want to make sure that we talk about like what you were saying. So I'll let you
Oh, I was just talking
get
about
into
my
it.
ex like right after I got out of
No,
porn.
not
I was
that
like,
part.
what?
Not that part. Talking about people having access to hormones.
Oh yeah, no, I just think that everyone should have access to hormones who needs it. And I don't want it to sound like gatekeepery or true scum, but like assuming that there are people who do have a medical condition that is the underlying reason for their transness, they shouldn't be barred from like medical care just because there's like a large proponent of people who are I guess getting involved in transness for ideological or like identity reasons because it's like being trans is more than identity to me. And I don't mean that. It's like I just do it better. It's like I'm just built different.
Yeah.
It's like truly like from a very young age. If you're like trans, you are
It's
aware
a core.
of that.
Yeah, it's a
And
core
it's
part of who you are.
and it's a very like difficult struggle. I think that everyone who does go through that struggle and like I'm not saying if you don't like you don't deserve hormones, but everyone who does go through that struggle like deserves to have the care that they need. And like it's really like heartbreaking seeing that the like conversation is now turning against people being able to like start very early just because there have been like more and more people who like try out hormones because they're like abundantly available and then they regret it, and it's like I don't think that people
The fact that it goes wrong for them does not mean that the people who genuinely need it should have
yeah,
access
or the
to it.
fact that like people who aren't trans are like taking medication that's not meant for them. It's like we don't we don't get mad at people who like need to take benzos or like Xanax
Uh-huh.
for like legitimate reasons for like benzo addiction on the
Mhm.
streets. We don't even fucking get angry at big pharma, but we get angry at big pharma when they start giving hormones to teenagers because God forbid it makes like some girl lose hair.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's so like I don't know, it seems so dishonest when you kind of look at all the factors at play where it's like they want to deny that this is a real experience for a lot of the people who do self-advocate for themselves at a young age. It's like I think I've met more people who transition like later in life who maybe transitioned for like I guess less altruistic reasons
Uh-huh.
than I do like people who came out as teenagers. Because like if you're a teenager and already struggling with gender stuff, that's not something that will go away.
Yeah.
And if I don't know, it just like doesn't make sense to me that like that is like who the first I guess to lose like hormones is going to be like in the next few years because like I'm seeing the big political shift as like access is like being rolled back more and more, and they're like just starting at like low ages, but then like in Texas, other states, like they're
Yeah.
trying to raise it up to 26 and I'm only 23. Like if I lost hormones just because it's like they think I'm too young to know what's best for myself, like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me because like gender dysphoria is a disorder that manifests at a very young age, and like you should treat it when it manifests.
I think it's weird and interesting to me that because obviously being trans is different from being intersex, but it's
It's similar
interesting
in
to
that
me that
ways.
we can see when you see physical manifestations that fall out of the binary of male or female and man and woman, we believe that differently than we do the idea that your brain can also control your gender and how you view your own sex.
I guess the issue is that it's treated as it's entirely identity based.
Yeah.
It's like people's identity around gender being just coming from like social conditioning, and I don't think that that's true. I like obviously don't think that people like are just born with like a girl or a guy brain. I think it's
Yeah.
like there's so many other factors at play, but there are very sex reliant factors and like how a brain develops and how a brain like recognizes itself. And if you're like going into puberty and not recognizing the changes that are happening to your body, then like there's a very good chance that you just were born with a disorder that like keeps you from being able to like, you know, identify or recognize
Your brain
yourself
is
in
like
that way.
wired, yeah, like your brain is wired differently.
Yeah, and I think that that's the case for a lot of trans women. And I don't think that people who don't have that shouldn't have access to care. I just also think that, like, I don't know, that's the reason.
It should just
that,
look
like,
different, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the reason that, like, continuing to medicalize transness, and not in the way where it's like we continue with, like, informed consent, just like anyone who wants to ask for hormones can get it. Because, like, that's what I did, but I also don't think that, like, actually medically vetting and, like, diagnosing people with, like, you know, early signs of like, you know, gender dysphoria is a bad thing. I think that it like at least helps weed out people who are going to be going into it with either unrealistic expectations for themselves
Uh,
or like with a very unhealthy relationship to their gender and not their sex.
I think there's, when it comes to unrealistic expectations, I think there's a lot of, because people bring up detransitioners a lot of the time.
Yeah, like that's
And the thing that like kills me is because they bring up like whatever percentage of like people who detransition, and when it comes to any kind of medical treatment, you're gonna have a certain group of like a
outliers.
certain percentage that quote unquote doesn't work. Um, but that group that doesn't work, I think what people conveniently, sorry, what people conveniently leave out of the conversation is the fact that like part of the time it doesn't work because people have unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
of what hormones are going to do. They think they're going to wake up 6 months from now and have, like, if they're trans women, they think they're going to wake up and have, like, C-cup titties and a cunt face. And
I definitely thought
they
hormones
don't.
were gonna do more than they would for
Yeah,
me.
same. But when they don't see that, then they decide to, oh, well, I'll just go live as my original gender
Yeah.
at birth, or because of like social issues that they run into for like housing, working, they just decide to detransition because it's just going to work better for them financially. And so that's why I don't appreciate like a lot of times when people have conversations about like trying to use detransitioners as a way to say that like treating people with gender dysphoria doesn't work, because the reality is a lot of the time it doesn't have anything to do with the fact of whether that person is trans or not.
Yeah, and they oftentimes aren't.
Yeah.
Like if you're detransitioning, you're probably not trans, or you're like in
Well,
such
no,
a
I
bad
think people,
situation that
yeah,
like it
I
just.
think people detransition, because even if you look at the statistics behind it, a lot of times people will detransition and they're still trans, but either their family rejected them and so they decided not to transition anymore. It was hard to get into like
Yeah.
employment or work, and so they detransitioned.
I
And
went like full femboy mode for a couple of years because of that. That was when I was still living in like South Carolina. So it's like I wasn't even really able to like I don't know, like grow out my hair and do all that shit like until I was in sex work and just like, you know, I would rather like be like a degenerate and like actually get to like live as a woman than like have to like be a guy just so I can work at fucking Marco's Pizza was where I worked. It's like not worth it. Not worth that fucking headache. But I don't know. I think if we're being completely real, there's like commingling factors in like who exactly is detransitioning and who exactly like conservatives are upset about like transitioning in the first place. And I think it's like they're upset by the idea of like young women. Like that's what always comes up. Is like young women getting on hormones, going bald, turning into like
Getting
looking like
double
men,
mastectomies.
becoming infertile and no longer being part of the like I don't know breeding class. It's so like
not the breeding
no
class.
no exactly. It feels very like you will like deny someone their body autonomy because like they're removing themselves from the fucking gene pool. Like it's I don't know. I say whatever. Like if people who aren't trans want to castrate themselves, I don't care. It's like if someone's gonna make a decision with their body, they're gonna regret. And I'm sorry, that's callous. I really don't think that means that trans people shouldn't have access to healthcare.
Yeah, 'cause
I
that's
don't
why-
think that's a good enough reason. It
What
just
we were
isn't.
like what we were talking about earlier too this morning. With I don't think there's ever going to be a utopian answer to the kids transitioning or trans athletes or like most of the world's problems, because like we live in a gray world, not a black and white world, and so like gatekeeping hormones from like young kids who do need them, just so that other young kids who get them don't harm, quote unquote, harm themselves.
Yeah. I mean,
It's not ever going to be the right answer.
I don't think so either. I'm very pro gatekeeping in the way that like making sure that people who do need those hormones are getting it, and that the people who don't need it, like they can go other avenues. I think like we can keep like the informed consent model for obviously people like who are older.
Who are like over 18.
Yeah, but like I think if you're like underage and already like experiencing like gender dysphoria, it's like absolutely go to a fucking psychiatrist for that. It's like I'm fully like trans med in my mindset. It's like yeah, like make sure that like care is being given to people who need it. It is not a large ideological thing. It is not a large political thing. I think that the issue is that people have jumped onto either side of this like discussion because of its like political alignment, and I don't think it's at all fair for actual trans people who are going through it, who like will have healthcare taken away just because like I don't know, one side saying like, oh yeah, we definitely need to get any like one who says they're trans on hormones as young as possible, just like be as passable as possible. It's like I'm gonna be honest, starting hormones younger doesn't make you that much passable. Like it's you like take it from me, I'm 6'2" and like started at 16. And I know girls younger who are like still like living openly as trans.
Well,
like,
I mean, Nikki Tutorial is like
yeah, it's like
very tall, and she
still
started
like a
at like
mountain.
12.
Good for you, Nikki. But no, it's
We
like
love you, Nikki.
I have a local
here.
friend who I got to see last night, and she started like I think she came out and started transitioning like 12, 13, like same story as me, like just was homeschooled so she could like be able to like be stealth by the time she was an adult. She got SRS when she was 18, and she was stealth for years, but like literally keeping up with that and like still having people like clock, but then like needing to hide it from yourself and from people around you is like so fucking like stressful, and like living in two worlds that like she like I think around like 25, 26 she like started being more open about being trans, and like she was like maybe one of the first trans people I met in person, like definitely one of the first post-op women, or the first post-op woman I met. So like talking to her and like her kind of finding more peace and just kind of like being open, but like in her day-to-day interactions not being clocked by like, you know, fucking Cletus down at the gas station who has a big issue with the idea of trans women, but like couldn't fucking point them out in a lineup. It's like it's ridiculous because I feel like when you look at what people are upset about with trans women, it's not typically trans women. It's like the idea of a man sneaking around in women's clothing.
It's not like actual trans women that they're upset with.
It's like transvestites or like people who like got on hormones because like they wanted to look like a twink, and like they never looked like a twink, they just lost their hair. And it's like I want to have more sympathy for that, but it just also is like it is not the trans experience. So having trans people attacked for it isn't fair.
I think there's like I feel like I probably give a little bit more grace to people in general, like in that context.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people who are gonna like hate trans people, they're gonna hate us like regardless. And so I don't lean as much into the idea of if trans people are viewed in a certain way, then we're gonna be accepted any easier. If that makes sense.
No, I understand.
Like, yeah, like the fact that
I think
some people identify with being transgender, but they don't really go through the protocol of being transsexual.
Yeah.
I don't think them behaving one. I think it's important to have a distinction between those kinds of
like,
people, but I don't think
trans. And, like,
I don't think us acting like Bob, who's been voting red for the past 25 years of his life, is not going to change his viewpoints on trans people as a whole.
Yeah. And like it's also a funny thought that like people who are especially like politically against trans women are still the ones who like are into them as a fetish. So it's like
I think they're definitely, because that's like North Carolina.
I think that's a lot of
Pornhub.
states.
It's not, but I think Pornhub
I think
specifically.
I turned them into chasers. I was down there with little teenage tranny body, and they're like, oh, we need some of that.
Because I think North Carolina, because if you look at the statistics for like people who consume porn, trans porn content versus like laws, like the U.S. and Brazil are like the two biggest places for like trans deaths, but they're also the biggest consumer of trans porn.
That's not surprising. I will say, I think the first like year or two of my transition, it was like in North Carolina right when they passed House Bill 2. And like I really think that it's been so damaging, like this hyper visibility we've had for the past few years, where it's like it's
a double-edged sword.
Yeah, because it's like it's given us a lot of visibility in certain ways that like has been very helpful, but it is also like I guess thrust us into the public eye and created like a spectacle out of whether we do or do not deserve rights. So there's people who are like jumping on to like give in their 2 cents on either side who just like frankly don't get it, want to completely make it ideological, and it's like just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think a lot of to that, I think a lot of trans issues are like social issues. They're not political issues.
Yeah. And that's also why it's like, I think it's ridiculous to equate, I don't know, like gay rights as like a political issue.
Yeah.
It is a social issue. And I guess it's nice that obviously gay rights are no longer like the main focus of like conservatives being like, oh, they're coming for us. Like they're
still coming for you, conservatives.
Yeah, they're still.
The gays are gonna get you quicker.
Oh yeah. You're using that glory hole at the truck stop. You think that's a woman?
No, glory hole at a
They're
truck
coming.
stop.
Those truckers, they left them a little lot lizard. I'm sorry, I'm a little tipsy. You can cut that out.
No, we're leaving it in.
Oh, okay.
The same. So do you think people should do porn or they should?
I don't think people should do porn.
Okay.
Like that's, I don't know.
If they decide to do it, do you think there's like a certain personality type that
there's a
is better
personality
fitted
type
for porn?
People who like sex.
Yeah.
People who like sex and seen and being seen
I feel
having
like,
sex.
Yeah, sex and people who or if you just need to make money.
Freaks.
'Cause I think that's
Freaks and
why a
poor
lot of
people
us-
are the two types of porn star. No, I definitely, I don't want to like speak against porn as a whole or the industry or whatever. It's like I feel like that's just not my battle to fight. I simply am not someone who's like cut out for that world. And it's like it's meant to be very transient. It's like a revolving door of like girls. I don't think my story is that different from a lot of people's, and I
It's
don't
a very
think,
get what you can get out of
Yeah,
it. And
it's
then
like-
act that.
I guess if I'm gonna give anyone advice on if they should or shouldn't get into porn, is like think of who you are and what your goals are, and if you really think that you have what it takes to keep up with like the mental, physical, and just social repercussions of being in porn, I'm sure like get whatever you can get out of it. Like really, like just it is a very like
You have to be very strong mentally.
yeah, you have to be very strong mentally. You have to have a fucking strategy. You need to like know how to like market yourself. I was a little sloppy. I think I was just like, I'm hot, whatever. It's like everything will be handed to me on a silver platter, and it's like, you know, to a certain degree, sure it was, but it's like it's not like I'm making dividends off of my image. I'm just very propagated. It's like I'm almost oversaturated in the porn world with like very little of that money going into my pocket. So it's like for how much notoriety I have, I should have way more money. But it's just, I think if you're too sloppy, you will get the very short end of the stick out of like working in porn. And if you're even sloppier, it's like there's much bigger repercussions. It's like I know everyone likes the idea of themselves being famous, or like even if they're a big like exhibitionist, they just want to get to be in porn to do it. I think that you need to like be very realistic with yourself and ask yourself like what you want out of, you know, working in porn. And if it's like something that you couldn't get elsewhere, then sure, go for it, try it out. But like realize that it is going to bar you from like just different opportunities. It really will. I mean, I personally, my only major regrets are like my first time shooting for a studio, and like I'm not gonna like, you know, name drop like who it is. Like we've made our peace. But the first time I shot for them, they like just took very unflattering pictures of me, and that was the first time like I think I'd had a studio shoot me outside of my own content. So it's like I really thought that they were going to like
It was gonna look even better than what your content would be.
yeah, no, exactly. Like I thought they were gonna like make the most out of like an opportunity to work with me.
I
was
could
like I thought it was
see-
special. Like it's
I could see the a lot of like trans specific, I guess, studios doing that.
But you want to talk about that?
What? No. Because obviously, like I said, I don't have like firsthand experience with it, but I could see a lot of studios, like trans-specific studios, doing that because they're catering to the lack for a better way to put it. They're catering to the male aspects of trans women.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the photography and videography, I can see them leaning into making sure that the imagery comes out highlighting those.
Yeah, no, I definitely will bring that up a lot. How like a lot of trans porn is very sissy, or it's like it's definitely like it's catering to an audience who is looking for a little bit of masculinity in their roles. So like
they want a boy with a
photographers-
tit.
Yeah, they want boys with tits, and they'll hire photographers who are going to like get some really hard angles of the girls, even if they don't look like that in person, just because it sells this fantasy of like, oh, isn't it so like dirty and naughty that
Can't
you're
you
watching
see
this?
it?
Like, oh my god.
Can't you see the
This
male?
feminized male is like debasing himself for you, and he's such a sissy slut. Like it's so disgusting, but it's like it's such a big base it's
Genre
catered
for
to.
porn, yeah.
But it's not all trans porn. It's just like you either luck out and you end up just like treated like a cis girl in the porn industry by the studios you work with, and it just depends on who you work with and how you market yourself. Or you just like you end up with one shoot that like makes you look like a brick, and it's like it all cascades from there. 'Cause it's like they already know that your audience is looking for just like some like hard jawline, some fucking narrow hips. Like they want boy sometimes, but like if you're in that, like, you know, if you're being typecast in that way, it's like I'm sorry for you, sis.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of content like that like just I really was excited for the shoot, and then like I look back on it, it's just like I know I look good in a lot of these pictures, but I know which ones they're putting up on the site.
Yeah.
And it's just
Playing into that.
yeah, it's like a lot of chasers, they really are just kind of looking for boy, and it's like
Boy with boobs and a dick.
yeah, it's rough. I think it's, you know, I should probably make more peace with it, because it's like I at least get to live day to day like pretty, you know, cis-normatively, but at least if you look up my fucking porn name, I cringe at the top image results. It's like I'm sorry to all the studios I've ever worked with, but it's rough.
Well, thank you. We're gonna close that out here. She is gonna be back briefly in another episode of T-Rated.
Stay tuned.
But thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a fun time.
Absolutely.